All right, welcome back to the Gold Advantage. World is about to start in a week with a kickoff match between the LEC and the LCS. So I brought back the myth, the legend,
Yeah.
the man who has disappeared, Scoot, to join me to discuss it. How are you doing, man?
I mean, I took a few months off, I guess, at this point. I'm good. Call of Duty ended and then work got hot. Haven't been able to record, unfortunately, but I have still been following along with League. I'm very happy to be back, to say the least. This is shaping up to be an interesting Worlds. I'm more excited about the format than anything, like the switch up
Yeah.
here. I think the Swiss stage is going to be super good for competition, actually yield the best teams and probably the best matchups coming into finals and all of that. So I'm very excited about that. I think we've got some good teams here out of Korea, China. I think LCS has a better shot than they've had in prior years. Maybe on a,
Oh, really? I think it's like the worst it's ever been
it
for
might
the
be the worst,
LCS.
but I also think it's the best chance to build plot armor, which we've seen
Okay.
is extremely important for winning worlds or any international tournament. So I'm just pumped up. I'm happy to be back, to say the least.
So look, you mentioned new format. I think I'll do a quick overview of that. Like before, we have a play-in stage with 8 teams from all the minor regions and the winner between the LCS and the LEC matchup. So Golden Guardians, BDS. Whoever wins that joins the rest of the minor regions to do the play-in stage. Play-in brackets, it's a double elimination. There's two sides, Group A, Group B. They play best of threes, and then the top four face off in a best of five series. The two winners from that then advance into the Swiss stage. Swiss stage is actually pretty straightforward. 16 teams, everyone's drawn into a matchup. If you win your match, you move up one. If you lose your match, you drop down one. It keeps continuing on that way until you basically reach 3 wins or 3 losses. You get 3 wins, you qualify to the knockout stage. If you get 3 losses, you're eliminated. But all of these qualifying matches to either pass on to the knockout stage or to be eliminated are actually going to be a best of three. So that's a pretty good kind of system there. So you're getting lots of chances. You're always facing someone who has the same record as you, which is really nice. You're not going to get these massive mismatches. I think it will just give us some like exciting games and good kind of playoffs
Yeah,
there.
you're not going to run into a team that like is able to put a spark together and not face anyone really good until
Yeah.
semifinals or finals, which I think is extremely important to actually coming away with the best team at Worlds. I think DRX is obviously an incredible run last year.
Yeah.
To say that they were the best team that showed up to the tournament is kind of a little bit of a misnomer, but they came away with the championship, so you can't take anything away from them, of course. But that is less likely to happen, I would say, in this format, and I think it yields better results in terms of a
I'm just
true.
really hoping we don't end up with, LCK one side, LPL other side, or something like that sort of bracket that's
Yeah,
just so ends up being a bit boring. I think this does give a shot to LEC and LCS teams who, if they cobble together a couple of wins and a good performance, there's a chance definitely to reach quarterfinals and even then, even maybe semifinals. And we'll speak about that. I think we're gonna do this tier list. I think why don't we kick off BDS, Golden Guardians, fourth place seed teams. They're gonna face off against each other. Just quick fire answer. Who do you think is gonna win?
I've been excited about Golden Guardians all year. Actually, ever since the Gory acquisition, so for a long time. And I think Golden Guardians comes away with this not only because I'm a U.S. biased slime ball, but I also think we talked about it prior to the show. BDS slightly on the decline. They looked better at the beginning of the year. I would say spring split area, right? Um, and I just think that it's not really. I don't even think this is going to be very competitive. I think Golden Guardians has put together a good team. They've kept them together, and they've only gotten better throughout the year. Whereas BDS is on the decline. The only thing I'll mention is that the devs like to mess with the meta during Worlds a little bit, slightly beforehand. So it's how well can you adjust to that. My counter to that is like I think Golden Guardians is fairly balanced at every position, and they've shown
Yeah.
that to be the case throughout the year. So I don't think they're really relying on anyone specifically, and that can only lead to them being able to adjust better than BDS will be able to. However,
Yeah,
I mean
agreed. I
BDS's
agree
spark
100%. I
is
think
there.
there's a lot of I think a lot of people are down on NA this year and just generally, and so Golden Guardians catching that flack. They did well all year long and then had a little hiccup at the end, which meant that they got the fourth seed. But when I look at this team, I would argue that they're the best or second best team coming out in North America. I think they're better than TL. I depending on where you categorize, do you think Cloud9 is the best team out of North America, or do you really think it's NRG? I think Golden Guardians is up there that can compete. Like you said, Licorice has been playing well. I think River and Gory are really good. Gory in particular in mid lane. Stixay has been really solid, and Huhi has been playing well. Also, the meta is going back to engage champs, which is great for Huhi.
Yeah.
So overall, I think it's good. Flip side is just BDS. They very nearly didn't make Worlds, and I think a lot of people were thinking that they wouldn't make it. And yeah, that just I'm a big believer in momentum and where you're heading in your trajectory. And I feel like BDS peaked, like you said, in that spring split, and just summer was not good for them. And I don't see why it would kind of continue to be. They have a interesting and a very top focused playstyle, but I think Licorice and River are good enough to kind of counter that. That being said, Crownie is phenomenal. And if he really shows up and the rest of the team manages to fix some of the slumps, I can see Crownie just being the difference maker like he has in so many games and taking it. But right now, I'm looking at Golden Guardians. I think
You gotta love a match like this too, because there's
yeah,
so much time off, and you only have one team to prepare for. So like
yeah,
everything's out the window at this point.
exactly.
There's gonna be so
So
much stratting and counter.
everyone's done like look tier list S A B C. I think generally we know like oh you win your region you're S tier if you're from LPL LCK. I think it's better let us run through each region and I kind of want to categorize it as in like do you like are these guys a favorite? Are these guys like a dark horse? Do they have no shot? And then like wild card, And that's how I want to look at like that's the ranking system here. Who do you really think has a shot to win it all? Who do you think has a dark horse kind of shot? Who's the wild card? And who just like there's no shot they're gonna win. And I think the best way to kick this off is gonna be with LCK, everyone's favorite. So
Everybody's favorite region.
Gen.G, look, Gen.G wins it. They get better and better, it seems, throughout the year, particularly Doran, who looked pretty sus at the beginning. I think Delight as well. They pulled things together. They convincingly beat T1. They're peaking at the right time. However, massive chokers.
Yeah, I mean that's the story of this team over and over again. I feel like it's very true for Peanut. Every time we've seen him at Worlds, it just has not ended well, and it's
Nah.
always they always look good to start, especially when it was prior groups situation. They would always dominate their group and come out,
Yeah.
but right when they had to play against teams that were kind of ready, it's almost like they played down to the level of their competition in groups and then never stepped back up to being like a tier one Korean team.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna put them in the no shot category because I until it happens, I can't believe that it's gonna happen, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, we know Chovy's gonna be nasty. He's gonna have a great Worlds. It happens every year. It's just the guys around him at this point. Are they gonna be able to step up, especially on the top side of the map? We saw some very, very suspicious play from those two last year. Well, specifically Peanut, I would say. I don't have a lot of faith, man. It never ends well.
You know what? I think the biggest issue with them is like exactly the choking, but then on top of that, the other issue is just like when has a favorite won Worlds?
Oh, never, dude.
It never
Never
happens.
happens. It never happens.
happens.
I'll
And
never
so,
I'll never forget FPX in groups. That was
oh, exactly. That
unbelievable.
was like the most egregious thing. So there's chokers here. I think Chovy, great as always, but never works out. I would say Pays has been looking really good as an AD carry. Definitely a good pickup, but he's, first time at Worlds. I'm with you. I kind of like, look, S tier team, no shot. I just don't think they're
It's
gonna
tough.
win it.
It,
It's
that's
just,
the break. Like them's the breaks. I don't know how else
it's
to
not
say
gonna
it.
happen.
Like that's just how it
Yeah.
goes.
Okay. Second best team out, second seed out of LCK. Everyone's favorite or least favorite team. Your favorite, your boys, T1. I'm gonna kick this off because you're too biased. So
Oh man, come
if I
on!
let
I'm not
you,
biased at all. Hey, listen,
you are.
I might be biased, but at least I'm not on Twitter like sending death threats to people that talk shit about T1 or
Did you
anything
not
like that.
donate to the van to
Oh
go
no,
sit outside the
I
headquarters?
don't like no, I don't do any of that stuff. I just like Faker and I like T1. I also like Guma and Carry a lot, so
I like them too, to be honest. I like the team. I
they
think
got
I
good
do.
vibes.
They do, and I think that it's a weird thing of. I think it's a very American mentality. If you don't win it, you're a failure. I'm like they've been like second place and they've reached the finals in so many times. And yeah, they have a problem with not winning, which is a big question mark around Faker and the situation. I'm not going to deny that. But being the consistently best player on one of the best teams for like 10 years in a row is phenomenal. That being said, when Faker was injured, real big question mark. And this team to me is a question mark. So Faker's back, supposedly recovered. The team did look better. They pulled off the run to make it to Worlds. But in that run up, like you had Carrier just on permanent Lulu duty. They got draft gapped by Gen.G. So you have a real, I think there's a big question for me. Is it like, was T1 not good, or did they not have enough time to practice and to really get a grasp of the meta? And that means, okay, it's been a month now. What T1 are we going to get at Worlds?
I mean, dude, it's always a question mark. Like,
yeah,
it's never going into Worlds. It's never not been a question mark, and the outcome is always that they perform well. That's it is almost a flip side of Gen.G.
It's
like
a story side. It's a storyline buff. They get to Worlds, and I bet they'll reach finals.
You want to see Faker win, so Faker's gonna win. Like, that's just kind of how it works. I'm not saying win the entire thing, but he's at least going to have a successful tournament. I do agree that there's an American mentality of like, you don't win, it's kind of a failure. And I feel like that's almost how T1 views it, because kind of the breakdown from losing Worlds the last couple times has been pretty detrimental, or at least the expressions on the players' faces, and you look at the reflection there. But I don't know. You can only take so much loss for so long until you finally break through with the same roster over and over again. And I think last year there were a lot of question marks coming into Worlds, right? Like, it still looked like Gen.G was a better team.
Yep.
You show up on the Rift and they're just making some insane macro decisions. They came out with some nutty drafts. It works, I think, when people aren't expecting it. And there's a lot of matchups here where teams won't be expecting T1 to be kind of off meta a little bit and making some different decisions that they're very comfortable playing with. And I think that's what makes teams special overall. So I expect them to be successful in some regard. I don't know if they're going to win it all, but there's no way to expect anything else at this point. You can't have another expectation.
I just think to think that they won't reach semis is insane. I'm not going to say they're the favorite, but they're on that cusp. For me, like, they're on the cusp of a favorite to a dark horse. It's like, there's a real, like, in my heart, T1 can win this. They reached finals. Zeus underperformed in finals. They kind of threw away the easy win, overcome by the storyline on the other side. I'm like, are they really just gonna phone it in? I don't know. I think Guma still looks good. I think Zeus is still phenomenal. The meta, we'll have to see how it suits Oner, but it's so hard to not imagine them doing well. Them bombing out in like Swiss stage or quarterfinals is like, no way. It just doesn't happen to T1 and to Faker.
Let's get bold here. I mean, they're winning it all. You know what? It had to happen eventually. You gotta make it. You gotta make a pick eventually. They're gonna win it all. The only way they lose is if it's to an LCS team in the finals. So
that'd be the best.
I mean,
all right, and then you have KT, the other telecom. They looked great all year, and then they lost to this T1 where Faker's come back, and it's a really weird thing because I've spoken to a few people, I've watched a few videos. A bunch of people thought that KT was actually going to be the favorite to win Worlds. They lose to T1, and it's like their reputation is in the toilet. Like, they're garbage now. And I don't really get it because they're still a really good team. They just lost to T1. And people talk about T1 like it's a terrible team. So if they'd beaten T1, I think KT would have been the favorite to win it all from the LCK. And I still kind of feel that way. Outside of T1 and their miracle buff, you have Keenan top lane, who's considered by some to be best top in the world. I'm actually going to say that I think they're a favorite to win it for me.
I mean, dude, the LPL would like to have a conversation if you're saying he's the best top in the world, of course.
Potentially. Definitely,
but at the same time, I don't disagree with you. Like, he's amazing. You look through mid to bot lane, like, the team top to bottom is phenomenal. There's not a position out there where they're not extremely talented. So I think they are extremely dangerous people take away from the fact that T1's T1. They're an extremely consistent team. They're hard to
Yeah.
beat, especially when it comes down to actual tournaments,
Yep.
semifinals, finals. Like, it's never going to be easy to beat T1. So I don't understand kind of the disrespect for KT coming into this tournament. I give them better chance than Gen.G for sure. I still, of course,
Yeah, I
have
kinda
T1 winning
do
because
too.
I'm biased, but like,
Yeah, but that's what I mean. It's like, to me, it's like I think depending on what T1 turns up, they're either favorites or they're the dark horse. I think KT for me is the favorite. Gen.G, not gonna happen. We know that. And I think to round it out, the other team, it's not gonna happen, is Damwon. D plus, Damwon Kia, whatever the name is. This is a team that was like a super team put together, like all super teams in league. It flopped. It hasn't been working. They made some roster changes. Kellen seems to be the support that's playing. I don't know. I'm just like, this team hasn't inspired me all year. I don't see why they're gonna come into Worlds and suddenly dominate and win it. So no chance to me.
I agree, they're not inspiring, at least performances throughout the season.
Yeah.
I will say that like they have 3 players that will show up when it comes to Worlds in Def Canyon and Showmaker. I think Showmaker has had phenomenal performances at Worlds over the years, so
Yep.
it's always hard to count him out individually. I think they'll be around. They'll stick around for a little bit at least. I don't
Yeah.
think it's
All
an
right.
early elimination or anything like that. But yeah, it's hard to trust this team right now for sure. I agree.
For sure. Okay. Here's a question: do we want to go LPL or do we want to throw one of the Western
Don't call
teams?
them minor regions.
Yeah, I was gonna say, do I say minor region? I was like, nah. But do we want LPL or do we want to
Western teams.
do a Western team?
You say that with so much disdain
No.
for the game. I mean, I'll leave it up to you. I think LPL is probably the right way to go, just considering
All right.
we're going to see a lot of those
LPL it
matchups
is.
because I think
All right,
early
LPL.
wins for these teams. So
LPL, this is where I'm going to break my rule about favorites, because the number 1 seed, JDG, I think is a favorite to win it all. They underperform.
Right,
By the way, I was on the JDG train last year, so
yeah, mistake.
they lost out, but they lost out to T1, so I'm okay with that.
Of course.
I just think this whole team is so solid. Like, one, they've dominated. Basically, no one was close to them in the LPL. It's such a competitive region overall. You have 369, another arguably best top laner, so solid, doesn't lose lane. You have Knight, Kanavi, jungle mid, just looking phenomenal. Such good synergy there. And then you have Ruler, who is, I think many people would say, is the best player in the world at the moment. It is, and then we have Missing, who's also phenomenal. So we have 5 players. They literally have, I think, a top 3 player in every single role. They lost in semifinals last year. I think they're coming out with a vengeance. They look better than they did last year. I think they have the experience of the loss. They're my favorite.
I don't listen.
They're my favorite to win.
I don't disagree that this iteration of JDG is better than last year's, like, at all. And they did make semifinals, so that's again though, like, if they have top 3 at every position, it's considered a super team. So you're breaking 2 rules here. You know, your super teams always fail situation is also
no,
going out the
because
window.
then organic super team.
Okay,
then a super team is where you take the best players and put them together.
You buy them, essentially, is what you're saying. Yes, I agree with that. To a point.
You vitality them. What team?
Well, that works, man. No, listen, I think Knight is definitely top 3 in the world, if not number 1 sometimes.
That's
it's
another
a
one.
little bit.
I mean?
It's a toss up in the LPL, of course, because like you also have Scout out there.
I was gonna say, who else is the Scout? Basically?
Yeah, Ruler is the best player in the world right now, I would say.
Yeah.
At least at ADC. This team, like, top to bottom, is phenomenal. I think one of the big questions last year was like, what are we gonna see from 369? He's a phenomenal top laner.
Yep.
And he performed. That just makes them all the more dangerous because you put him on that stage and he did a good job. He's going to do it again this year. They're going to be in the conversation to win it all. I don't think anything changes about that. It's going to matter how they match up against the LCK, in my opinion, again, because they came up against T1, who was hot last year. I don't think they would have beaten DRX either. So
I don't know. I think they got kind of, if they were on the other side of the bracket, I think they might have beaten DRX.
I don't think anybody could have beaten DRX last year.
I think they could have. I think they had the storyline running to the finals.
DRX
until they reached the finals. But that was all right.
DRX made so many mistakes and got away with it. Like,
Yeah,
It's something that doesn't happen. Like it
true,
shouldn't happen ever.
true.
So again, it's just going to matter how they match up against the LP or LCK. That's
Agreed.
really the question here, and that's always the question coming into Worlds. So I mean, follow those early matchups, see how it's shaking out. But this is by far the most consistent LPL team. They're gonna
And
set the mark.
but the whole LPL, I think at least the top three is defined consistency, and I think BLG is a next one, second
Yeah,
seed. Again, this team, I think they set the regular season record. They destroyed everyone except JDG, who's their kryptonite. They ended up going 0-7 against JDG. They lost to LNG in the finals after losing to JDG. To me, it's like they're so good, and if they avoid JDG in the bracket, I think they could win it all. But they're kind of my question mark. Like, is what happens if they run against the LCK top team? But yeah, basically, it's like they're probably a favorite as well.
I mean, I think every team coming out of the LPL this year is kind of a favorite. If you look at their
No, actually, I would say
rosters,
there's one. Weibo isn't.
I don't know, dude.
Yeah,
Weibo,
but I agree with you. I actually think JDG, BLG, and LNG are all favorites to win it for me.
I think
They're
Weibo
in
is
that
more
category.
dangerous. The one thing I'll say is that like when an LPL team shows up and comes to win, it's never the one seed. Realistically,
No,
it's always
no,
like a 2 or 3. So
yeah,
that's why I look at BLG and LNG as teams to like show out this year. I
absolutely.
think Gal was good for JDG for so long. He has that experience. Obviously, Ben is one of the best in the world, and I think
Yep.
Elk is extremely consistent. Again, like we've said, this is kind of the story of the LPL this year.
The
Like
whole
top to
team's great.
bottom, the rosters are disgusting,
Yeah,
and they're gonna perform. So I don't. I mean, ever since.
but I don't feel like the thing is Yagao and all of them. I don't know. Can they go when the going gets tough? You know.
I lean
And
more
that's my question.
towards.
I actually, to me, I honestly, I put LNG
Yeah,
over
I
BLG.
was about to say the same. I lean more towards LNG to be
Yeah,
successful and go when the going gets tough than I do
yeah.
BLG in this
I think
instance.
Gala was such a great pickup for them. Like you said, Scout is in contention with Knight. That's like a huge, pickup there. And so he's playing well. I think the team is just playing well. The fact that they beat BLG puts them, I say they're a bit above them, but on top of that, they took JDG to 5 games.
Yeah,
So if I'm really rating JDG, to me, you have to rate then LNG.
I think LNG is also like less top reliant than BLG, and I always find difficulty trusting teams that are top reliant because it is such a detrimental lane if your top laner fails.
Yeah.
And I think BLG definitely has more of that reliance than LNG does because you look at LNG, it's definitely mid bot lane that's going to carry them through this.
Mm-hmm.
Especially Scout, especially Gala, and both of those players again are some of the best in the world. Uh,
Yeah.
I mean, of course, I have some bias from a few years ago when we started recording and LNG showed up with those electric blue jerseys.
So good.
It's so good, dude. The logo, everything across the board. I've tried to get
Yeah.
one. I can't get one. It's impossible to find. But I don't know, dude. I definitely trust LNG more than BLG this year, and I actually think that they could come out as the top LPL team from the Swiss
I
stage.
kind of agree with you. I think so. Like to me, it's obviously you can't. I don't know. JDG is so good, I can't write them off. But that's also exactly why, like we said, I'm breaking so many rules saying that. But to me, yeah,
I mean,
LNG is a team to watch. Weibo is why I created the wild card category. They are, who knows?
yeah, that's the
Like the
point.
Shy, Weiwei, Xiaohu. I have no idea. They might win, they might lose, they might not even make it out of the Swiss stage. But
I
they
mean,
also
that's
might be the reason. They might also be the reason another LCK or LPL team doesn't make it out of the Swiss
Of
stage.
course. I mean, that's the game, right? Like, but you put out a roster that's super high variance. I mean,
Yeah,
Light is obviously a phenomenal player. The Shy is insane. Everybody wants to see him at Worlds. I think that's what we're all looking forward
yeah.
to. I 100% agree with you.
Wild
This is
card.
just so high variance that they could cause a lot of problems. You could see them at 2-0 in the Swiss stage and then knocking people down a peg, and they could
Yeah,
be out in 3 games.
yeah.
It's all over the place. It's going to be super fun to watch. I I also want to throw back to LNG for a second. I also think
Go back,
that
go back.
Poppy is an incredible coach, so I think that helps out there as
Very
well.
true.
Yes,
Very true. I
uh,
like that.
but again, like Weibo's the team to watch without a doubt. I think you know what you're gonna get from the other three. You don't know what you're gonna get from this team at all. and that's what makes it fun. So
Yep.
we're watching Weibo the entire way through. I'm picking up every single one of those games, and it's just gonna like this. They're gonna cause chaos. That's all I can see happening.
Okay. LEC, LCS, you pick.
I mean, we'll save the best for last. So we'll go LEC.
We'll go LEC. I knew you were gonna do that. All right, kicking it off with G2. G2 obviously essentially played with their food all year long. Won 3 out of 4 titles that you could win in the LEC. I feel like even the second one that they lost was just them messing around. It really felt like no one was actually close to them. The region overall looks worse, but I am actually pretty bullish on this team. And I think there's 2 main reasons. And there's one negative. One reason is I think Broken Blade has always been a weak link internationally. And every year he's actually just gone better and better, in my opinion. When you look at him at TSM, then you look at him at Schalke, and then you look at him here, and you look at how he's been performing under pressure and evolving as a player, I really think he's improved year on year on year. And every time he's come to an international event, I think he's done better. Yike is incredible. I think he might be the best player in Europe very soon. Maybe next year, maybe the year after. The way he played against some of the best junglers at MSI was inspiring. And now he has that international experience. I think he's going to do even better this split or this tournament. So I'm very excited about that. We have Mickey, who internationally recognized as one of the best supports in the world. So that's phenomenal. Downside, I'm a little bit worried about Caps. He's not been looking good for a couple of years now. He's fine. But I do think that if BB holds his own, Yike steps up, which it looks like G2 is comfortable doing, and Caps doesn't become Craps. Doesn't have to become Claps. He can just be Caps, just not Craps. I can see this team making quarters, which, look, top 8 I think is decent. I want them to reach quarters. I could see them making an upset. They face off against like a Damwon, if they face off against a Weibo, I can see it happening.
We got at least a semis appearance for these guys this year.
Yeah, I would love that.
I think calling back all the way to the Yike acquisition when that went through, it flew so under the radar because you had so much stuff being built in the LEC in terms of super teams, along with Vitality, the Bo situation there. And then this guy just comes out and he's much better than everybody else that was picked up.
He was so hype when he was in the LFL. Yeah,
it was unbelievable. And I think top to bottom, I mean, they've kept the roster consistent, which I think is very good for success, especially as a, we're going to say minor region here, of course, in quotes. But they are minor when you compare them to the
minor major.
LCK. It's not as easy to interchange parts, I think, in the LEC as it is in the LPL or the LCK, because I don't think you're getting a consistent play style out of each player like you are over there.
Sure.
And that makes it a little difficult. So I do appreciate that they've kept the roster together. Caps has the tendency to show up when it matters. And I think that's part of what makes him special. I do think they played with their food all year, which maybe, takes the foot off the gas a little bit. Doesn't look as good as he has in years past, but everyone's going to show up for Worlds. I love Hans Sama, of course.
Love him too.
I don't know. It's hard to doubt this.
I don't think he's been as good as his last Worlds appearance when he was on Rogue, 2021. But I think he's playing way better than last year.
But honestly, the Rogue situation, Rogue was so reliant on him being successful sometimes that it almost made his performances better because there was only one way for Rogue to win games, and it was almost through Hans every single time. So I think that leads to a little bit of statistical bias in his favor. But again, like you said it yourself, it's hard to really reflect on this and be like, oh, I think they're going to be overwhelmingly successful because I think the LEC overall has gotten slightly worse. So then you're like, how good are they actually going to be on the international stage?
I think they're going to be good.
They're going to be good. They're going to be good. They always show up. G2 is the team. If somebody's going to break through, G2 is the team that will do it. Like,
exactly.
I think we all know this.
100% agreed. Second seed, Fnatic. just a miracle run of all miracle runs. Like 10th place to 9th place to making it to Worlds. Incredible turnaround for the org, for the team. Razork looking back on form. Noah has performed well. I don't know at the peak as where he started, but I think the Trimby pickup has really been great. Oscar Rinnan, though, injured, had to take some time off. I think he's going to play at Worlds. I'm sure they'll have Wonder in the back pocket. But Noah and Oscar, first Worlds appearance. I am a little bit, look, I think they'll do well. They have some unique picks. They obviously have a cool read on the meta, and they figured some things out, which I like when teams are creative. I don't know if those picks will translate to Worlds or if they'll be able to pick them because of meta changes. But I like the fact that they're looking at it. And I think that actually talks about G2. We didn't talk about that, but they played some really unique combinations of champs and some counter picks like the lists, which I think were great. And I love to see that because if you're going to try and play against the LCK and the LPL teams the way they want you to play, you're not going to beat them. So you need to have your own read on the game, your own play style, and be confident in that. And I love that about G2. I think, and going back to Fnatic, the other question mark is Humanoid. Last year Worlds, arguably the best Western mid laner,
Yep.
or the best Western player out of at last Worlds, but looks so meh this whole split. Who would you put above him last split at Worlds?
I was gonna say something really dumb, and you would have just hated me for it. It was gonna be a joke. I'd like to preface this by saying it's a joke with Fudge.
Okay.
No,
Cool story.
I think
we end it here. Thanks, guys.
I think you make a couple good points about rookies, and I do think
Yeah.
it's two difficult spots to have rookies in because
Yeah.
those are also the two positions where I think
Mhm.
LPL and LCK are the strongest, specifically LPL in top lane.
Yeah.
It's like you pull a 369 for your first matchup or anything similar,
Yeah.
it's going to destroy your confidence a little bit unless you're able to pull something miraculous off. The
He's gonna
same goes for
punish
bot
you.
lane. Like one
Yeah.
mistake and you're going to get punished immediately. So I worry about that, and I actually
Mhm.
think that Fnatic is probably going to have a pretty rough time here.
Yeah.
It's going to be a lot on like Razork to make the right decisions on who to support around the map, and I don't know, man. There might be too much to handle in that regard. So
Yeah. I agree with that.
yeah,
I look. I don't see them getting through Swiss stage. To be honest,
no,
we can't. Sorry, we forgot about the whole ranking system. I think G2 is a wild card. I'll say. Everyone else is a no shot. You can just like this is just like from here on out, it's a no
yes. I
shot.
mean, Fnatic's a no
But there's
shot.
certain ambitions. Like, look, if Fnatic or like for me, G2 should make it out of Swiss stage.
Yeah,
That's their goal. If they do, I'm happy. If they make it to semis, I think great. That's a great performance from them. Fnatic, to be honest, I don't think they're gonna make it out to a stage. Is my answer there.
no. Org
Um,
does have a tendency to get hot though at
it
some
does.
interesting times, so it's possible here, but
I
I
don't think
really
they're
don't
making it out
trust
to a
it.
stage. I just don't see them making it out to a stage. And same with Mad. Look, Mad has had a really consistent year, good performances. They've been overlooked all year long, by myself included. I just don't think they've ever delivered internationally. They didn't look good at MSI. I don't believe in them.
Teams
And this,
never delivered internationally.
exactly. And when we look over it, if we talk about a rough year for the LEC, I think the LCS is really looking rough.
Hey man,
Like
relax.
really
We're
looking
skipping
rough
over
here.
BDS because we have them getting eliminated by GG.
Yeah,
First
yeah.
of all,
We
that's
talked
just
about it earlier.
yeah.
Um,
Goodbye.
Look, NRG number one team from the LCS. They pulled off what is, I think this has to be the biggest upset,
It was
at
pretty
least in
cool
recent
too.
memory.
You know,
It was awesome.
buy the
It's great.
spot, win the league.
I'm so
It's
happy. I'm so
crazy
happy for them. Like,
turnaround.
Dokled's grinded. He really grinded. A lot of people talk about Champions Q as how he was like number one, and he was one of those players that took it really seriously. Contracts to be back on top for to have a high with Cloud9. He dropped off the face of the earth, come back. Palafox, a guy who's been in the league, he proved himself. And then FBI, FBI and Ignar. A lot of people thought Ignar, that's it, he's washed up, and FBI one and done. But they did it. They pulled off a huge upset. But I also, to be honest, I blame Cloud9. I think Cloud9 were sleepwalking their way through this whole year, playing so passive. They did nothing to actually like work or push themselves to win, Whereas like you look at G2, even when there was no competition, they were doing unusual drafts, different picks, playing different types of comps, like really trying to push the gauntlet of what was possible. Cloud9 just felt like they were just like chilling. Fudge, you mentioned him from what was a really promising superstar. What a mediocre year. And Eminez, honestly, choked the shit out of playoffs and has had quite a few choke jobs. For someone who talks a lot of shit, I'm just not that impressed by him.
I ran into some trouble in
Yeah,
solo queue recently,
he did.
so
Yeah,
unfortunate there. I don't.
you talk that shit when you win LCS, when you can't even, when you have to leave your region to go play in the LCS, and then you can't win it on an org that has basically won every single time.
Yeah, I mean it's disappointing to say the least for
Yeah,
them not to win, especially after a
yeah,
3-0 in semifinals. You should be able to turn around and just do it again. Like that.
yeah,
That's how good your team is, top to bottom.
yep.
Like the roster is very good for North America. Nobody doubts that. The talent is there for them to win. But I think again,
Yep.
you don't push yourself, you're not going to get better. You're not really going to compete in international competitions. However, Cloud9 always does. That's the thing. Like,
Yeah.
but the problem there is that I don't think the core of why they competed at international competitions is still there, which leads me to a lot of doubt. I think there's a ton of ego on this team, kind of outside
Mm-hmm.
of Blaber and Berserker. I think those two guys are fairly humble. I don't know so much about Blaber, but I know Berserker is, and they perform. I expect them to have a fairly good run on their
Mm-hmm.
own. However, the whole roster together, I don't know. Like it it brings a lot of doubt into play, to say the
Mm-hmm.
least, especially after they lose LCS finals. That's kind of
Yeah.
you have to win that, to be honest. You know, props to Energy for putting it together. I think so good with, I think Contracts was the glue that held CLG together, and I think he's done a good job with Energy as well.
Mm-hmm.
The run was phenomenal. A lot of comeback stories there, but like if you're C9, you have to finish it out, and there's no excuse on that end. So it does lead me to a lot of doubt in the international tournament. I would put them in dark horse just for the org name,
Yeah.
but like outside of
I don't
that,
honestly. This is the question. Like to you is, do you see them getting out Swiss?
I'm gonna put them getting out of Swiss. I don't think it's a good year for the LCS, but I think there's a
Okay.
chance. I mean, if you needed a wake up call, it's the LCS finals, right? Like
Yeah.
you the only thing you can prepare for after that is Worlds. You've just lost to NRG, who everybody on paper has you beating. You should be
Yeah.
100% of the
Yeah.
time. So you need to turn around and do something about it. And it's either, I think it's either, they get out of Swiss or they crash and burn. And it's an early exit. I would say 3 games, if anything.
Yep. Okay.
So
Final team, Team Liquid. Apart from Golden Guardians, who we talked about earlier. Look, Team Liquid has struggled all year. They brought APA in. He's performed better. Team definitely looks better, but I don't. I don't think there's much to be said. They look better, but they don't look that much better. And if I'm down on NRG and Cloud9, how can I be up on TL? I know people are
I
really
give
big
you one
on
reason.
Summit. I'm a Summit hater. I've always been a Summit hater. I called it that he was overrated when he won MVP. You can go back. It's on the
Yeah,
VODs.
actually did.
I said this guy is going to be figured out, and he was in playoffs. Complete failure on his part there. Gets dropped straight away. There's nothing here that makes me go, okay, yeah, they're
I
gonna.
I try never to give anyone on this podcast any credit for anything they've said, but you were right about that. Uh, it's impossible to kind of look over NRG and C9 and be doubtful about them and not also be doubtful about Liquid because they did come in 3rd place in LCS finals. Like
Exactly.
if they had something to show, they would have shown it there. The only thing you got to remember is that Piosik made so many mistakes at Worlds last year,
He was so bad before.
and he got away with it.
Yeah.
The guy did just win an international championship.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's one thing to bring around. And then I would also say, you made note of it earlier. If engaged champs are coming back, right? Core JJ is one of the best. So,
But he's not been looking great.
I know. He might be past his prime a little bit, but he is very good at that.
Yeah.
So
Honestly,
maybe there's
if I had
something
to put
there.
my money on the best North American team, for me, it's Golden Guardians.
I mean, it
And
might.
look,
Yeah, it probably
Cloud9
is.
should be the answer. Cloud9 should be the answer. But it's not just the loss to NRG, it's the way they were playing all split long.
Yeah, I
They
mean,
were so lazy and so sloppy, and you could just see that they weren't making an effort to make themselves dominate the region and be better.
yeah, I think again, like that has to lead to some reflection, hopefully for C9. But I do
Yeah,
agree
I
with
don't
you
think you can
at
do
the
it in a month.
moment, and it's tough that Golden Guardians now has to play one match to decide if they get
Yeah,
in or not. I think they'll win that, and I do think top to bottom, like most consistent roster, I would say. Don't
yeah,
rely on anybody too much. I also think there's a good mix of like this roster is young and hungry, and it's their first world appearance, so not the
yeah,
youngest, but like I think River
yeah. I don't think they're
Glory.
young at all. No one
No,
on
no,
that
no, no. They're
roster is
not
young.
super young, but like I mid lane has always been a position where if you have a young guy,
Sure.
there's a good chance for him to show out. We saw that last year with DRX, so
All
I don't
right,
know.
playing teams. We have kind of these are quick. I think we'll be quick on this one.
I already have my
I
predictions.
expect BDS or Golden Guardians to make it out of play-ins.
Yes, without a doubt.
And they're also in Group B, which is with Flying Oyster, DFM, and Team Wales. Who I think it's definitely the weaker group. So to me, hey, I think they're gonna make it out, which leaves one other spot for the other side there. Group A is definitely tougher. You have GAM, Loud, and PSG. I honestly, I think it's PSG. And the reason is they picked up Maple. They just look more solid. I think overall that region is better. I'm not as hot on the PCS. I think the VCS is just a better region at the moment. So PSG is sitting at the top. I think Loud is going to be super exciting to watch. They're pretty wild and aggressive. So that they should be a good one to just watch for some upsets there. Maybe they will upset PSG, but yeah, I don't really see anyone else. You know, like I would have said GAM is maybe the team to grab the second spot, but they had a really bad MSI performance. Um, and yeah, and the thing is do I really see a second round team? I don't think DFM might have been my shot. I know you're pretty big on DFM,
Uh,
but they
yeah,
swapped Utapon from AD carry to top lane. I don't know. I don't see it
I mean
happening.
it's a
I don't
weird
see them
switch.
reaching Swiss.
It's a weird switch for sure.
It's a weird switch.
Obviously LEC LCS lands in a good spot here because they have the
Yeah.
easiest situation to get into the Swiss stage. Um, if they don't get out, you can start calling those regions
Ooh,
absolute jokes at that point.
yeah.
Without a doubt. The one thing I'll say is like DFM has always performed fairly well at Worlds,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know if that has to do with coaching more so than anything, but they are the one team that kind of steps up to bat from like the minor regions typically. So I'll give them the benefit of the doubt here and say they're getting out. But I will say like I don't think Wales has a chance. I think it's more the winner of DFM and CDBC, Flying Oyster that will be coming out of the second slot in that group. The other side, I mean, yeah, I think it's hard to trust Loud. I agree with you in terms of upsets. That's typically kind of the Brazilian play style in all
Yep.
esports is to kind of throw things out the window and get fairly aggressive. It's why Loud was
They're
so
aggressive when
successful
they're
in
winning. They're
Valorant.
aggressive when they're losing.
Yeah,
Fun to watch.
that's why
That's it.
Loud was so successful in Valorant. Like they took people off their game for such a long time. Um, PSG is the one team there that's an absolute lock to get out. If they don't, disappointment in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree.
I'll give it to GAM as the second spot, but I don't know. I could really see it being any of the other three teams. But I'll pick GAM for now. I
All
think
right. Okay.
most
We'll see.
consistent.
That wraps it up, guys. Longer episode covering all the teams. We hope you enjoyed it. Hope you've enjoyed the return of Scoot. And if you have enjoyed it, please like and subscribe. And if you haven't enjoyed it, please leave your hate comments down below.
Oh yeah.
Helps engagement. And yeah, let us know your thoughts. Always enjoy it when you guys let us know whether you agree or disagree with us. We typically reply back. So looking forward to those. And I'm really looking forward to Worlds. Thanks, everyone. And see you later this week.
Peace out.